Hello and welcome to TGP Has A Podcast. This week we've got Jacko joining us, the man who has gone on to achieve so much, not just in TGP series, but in various other leagues as well, including ILR and his own series, Jacko Car. I sat down and had a chat with Jacko about his time in TGP since day one, and also what has led him to his successes in his other leagues. Here he is, Jacko. So, Jacko, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. We've been meaning to get you on for quite some time. Of course, plenty to talk about in your career across TGP and all the various disciplines that you've taken part within as well. But where did it all start? How was it that you got into the series, and where did you come across us?
Oh, hello, Mike. Good to be here, actually. It feels somewhat belated being here now that I've been here just over 10 years now, a whole decade. But I, believe it or not, I think all that remains in TGP of original drivers is myself and league owner Dom. And I remember a tweet back in, what would have been, April or May of 2011 from Dom saying, if anybody wants to join an online racing league or wants to do something on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, I can't remember, DM me. And sure enough, a few weeks later, there I was on the grid in Bahrain with a load of other like-minded F1 fans that all had a PlayStation, all had F1 2010 it would have been. And yeah, I found myself as part of TGP, or Twitter Grand Prix Series, as it was originally referred to as back then. So yeah, so I've been a part of the league since the very, very start.
Well, you did race, as you said, from the very start, in the very first race as well. Um, and obviously, no one really knew quite how much it would grow by and quite what it would go on to do. But did you think at the time that this had legs to last, you know, as long as it did, well, even that season and into another season after that, let alone 11 plus for years that it has been?
To be fair, at what would I have been, 15, 16 years old, you don't think like that anyway. All it was back then to me was once a week, two races, racing with a load of F1 fans, and it was just a bit of fun. You're not, I guess, like most 16, 17-year-olds, not thinking about the future. Um, but looking back and seeing how far the league has come, it's one of the, I guess, one of the original PlayStation leagues, and it's mad to look back on it. But certainly back then, there was no thoughts like that going into the future. It was just something every week for a bit of fun, and then you'd go to school the next day, kind of thing, and forget about it. But yeah, it's yeah. Well, I guess that's my answer. I didn't think ahead into the future, Mike.
But very early on, you sort of got yourself embedded within the league, within racing that was going on. And unfortunately, in just the second season, a bit of controversy as well. You lost the win at Hungary in season two. You crossed the line first, but the stewards took it off you for an alleged incident with Dan. Do you remember the incident? Do you remember what it was that happened that lost you the win? And what were your thoughts on it?
Vividly remember that one. And I knew this was going to come up. I also knew it was going to come up very early. Um, I developed a name very early on as the Crash Kid. So I could drive. I'd be sort of a mid top 10 sort of driver, but I had no racecraft at all back then. Hungary season two, it might have been chasing down my first win, or certainly one of those sorts of numbers. And I remember coming out the final corner, I was behind Dan. Um, Either he or I, no, he got on the AstroTurf on the outside, and I had the momentum coming out of the final corner to get up, like alongside him. And good old EA, no, it wouldn't have been EA Sports, good old Codemasters, what do you call it? Where the physics sort of
Okay.
don't agree with each other, let's say.
Right.
Spun him across the front of me and me around, so I then quickly reversed, did like a J turn on the pit straight and crossed the line first. And I think it was Jack Hammer of all names who come across the line P2 or P3 who would eventually inherit the win. But to this day, I still deny that that was my fault. And what I don't hold a grudge, but what bothers me is that the steward's report was based on, the mini map in the corner. It is
Yes.
somebody else's point of view. It might have been the guy in P4 or P5. Their point of view of the mini map, which is tiny in the bottom right hand screen, the
Mm.
bottom right hand corner of the screen, is what they took the win off me. I think I was disqualified actually from the race, and I assume Dan was the favoured man at the time in TGP, as opposed to me.
So
I
you
could say
think there was
that.
a bit of steward bias going on as well?
I think there might have been a few notes handed between each other, but yeah, on my heart, I did not cause the issue. I don't think Dan was to blame either. I want to put it down to the game being at fault, but the move, in my mind, was complete,
And
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 it should have
and
been
you
my
still
race
feel
win.
aggrieved to this day about that decision?
100%, because I don't get many wins. You look at Dan, he's what, third on the list all time, something silly like that. He could have let that one go. He shouldn't have reported
Well,
it.
you talk about the wins tally. I mean, you've had four in total across your seasons in TGP one. Um, why do you feel that you weren't able to get any more, or haven't at least to date been able to get any more than the four? Why is it that in TGP one things haven't quite gone to plan?
I was never the fastest driver anyway, and I was always, even at a young age, I would accept that. That was just a thing. Like I say, back then it was for, well, still even now it's for fun, but back then it was for fun in a different way. So I never put the time into practice as such,
Mm.
and there were just people that are naturally better, like raw talent. And I think I was one of the guys that pushed for a second tier over the years, and eventually that happened.
Well, we talk about obviously the second tier. You did then move to TGP2, where you have had more success there, including 9 race wins and 14 pole positions.
And
So you've
counting.
been and counting, of course. Yep,
Yeah.
still competing in TGP2 to this day. You obviously you've had some fantastic results over the time in TGP2. You lost your pace a little bit for the start of it, but you did then come through to win a fantastic race in TGP2. I think it was in Russia season 14, changeable
Yeah.
conditions. Did that sort of fuel the fire to sort of get back into it a little bit more and give it a little bit more effort?
Yeah, so the pace thing, it just dropped off and dropped off and dropped off to the point where I wasn't having fun. I think I did a sort of elongated sabbatical where over the 2014 and 2015 games I didn't race at all. I
Mm.
remained sort of on TGP's books, and then a bit like in 2011, there was rather than a tweet, it was a direct message from at TGP Series. Hi, I'm looking to get the old band back together. And of course, what Dom meant by that was people like myself, Mr. John, and the one in orange, people like that, as well as the new names that were coming in, your Corey Daltons, your Jack Goodings, and so on. Joe Sayer was there as well. I think he'd been out for some time. And then I think it must have been fourth race back. I still had no pace, by the way. I think I qualified down in 11th in that race or something silly. There is some footage somewhere on YouTube. I just pitted at the right time. When the safety car was coming in, I went onto Inters, come out, caught everybody up on that lap. Oh, no, 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 sorry. I pitted when the safety car still was going around and then caught everybody up at the end of that lap. And then when it went in, I just flew away and dominated. And from that moment, it sort of very much got me back into league racing. However, with this issue of, all right, that was just a well-timed bit of strategy, I was still slow, and I would remain slow up until sort of the end of 20, 2019, I want to say,
Right.
2019, before I then went on to Will. But that period between 2016 and 2019, I was enjoying it, but I was slow, and I wanted to be better. And then, of course, once I got the will those years later, things then changed.
And your move to wheel, how did you find that initially? Because some drivers take it on immediately, find success immediately, are quicker. How did you find that transition from pad to wheel?
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of people about it before, obviously putting the money into it, and some guys would say, oh, they picked up straight away, or it took them a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. I was I was very comfortable, very quick in that I could do a hot lap in time trial. I was quite happy with that.
Mm.
But when it come to racing against others, it was like the good old days of 2011. I'd have no racecraft and I'd be scared to race against people. So I still found myself at the back for a little while, but in my head, because I know I've been doing those hot laps and like good times, I was like, there's clearly something here there. So it's just learning having to use your hands and feet rather than just your thumbs. And I think it must have been a good 4 or 5 months before I saw any success. And then
Mm.
it was that season, that infamous season, which I'm sure we'll touch upon, Mike, of TGP, where I truly found my pace. The wind started coming again. The poles just, I've flooded the market with poles in TGP. I'm sure there's a stat actually. I think I'm the most prolific pole sitter over the last 3 seasons in TGP2 or something silly like that. But yeah, it was a good few months getting into the wheel. But I'm glad I did it. It's made all the difference because I've gone from the back of the grid briefly to the front of the grid and now sort of just off the podium, maybe back to being like a top five, top six driver most races.
And and obviously when you think about the time that you've been able to sort of give and get better and obviously put in the effort to get to a point where you can be competitive again, is that something that you're proud of being able to achieve, or?
You know what? Other than those months getting used to the wheel, I really don't put a lot of practice in. Like nowadays, it's very much just sort of, at best 5 or 10 laps on time trial to get your eye in for the braking points before a race, and that's
Mm,
it. So yeah, very little practice. It's almost like it's natural. I'm well aware I'm not one of the fastest drivers, like in esports as a whole, but within sort of TGP2 and the relevant Jacko car and one hub tiers that I'm in, I don't need to practice. It's there, and that's good enough for me. I don't want to be the fastest person in the world. There's believe it or not, this may come as a surprise to some people that sit in their bedrooms all day, but there is a life away from the PlayStation, you know. So I'm very content with my like pace. It's a good competition as well, especially in TGP2 every week. There's, you don't know who's going to win.
no. And so you obviously you took as you mentioned there, a sort of handful of races away from TGB2, and you only missed a handful of races between seasons 22 and 27. Looking back on those seasons, but returned to obviously TGP full time. You mentioned you became a really quick qualifier. What does make you so quick over one lap? Um, and can you see yourself sort of breaking into the top 10 for pole positions in TGP2? Is it something that you've always sort of had a particular skill for? Is that one lap pace? You mentioned it obviously with your time trial performances as well.
You know what? In my, let's say, my first coming of TGP, so that the 11 to 2014 era, I think I had one pole. I was shocking. And then it wasn't really until the wheel where the poles really started coming in. I don't know what makes me so good at qualifying now. I don't have an answer for you, but sometimes it'd just be nice to like have a few more race wins and a few poles. But it is what it is. Um, as for the top 10 all-time pole sitters in TGP2, again, it was never something I was bothered about because I was never on pole. But the last year or so, I've been creeping up that list, and I'm now only because the pole the other day in Brazil, actually, most recent race I was in,
Hmm.
I think that's put me on 15.
It
So
has. You're right. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm only 3 away from the top 10. So that is now a goal. Um, like with everything, you start get into the top 10 and then go from there. See how far up you can get. I've definitely got 3 more poles in me. Probably this season. You never know.
And that's something that you can see yourself sort of giving a bit of time to try and improve.
Again, I just turn up on the night, and if the lap is good, the lap is good, isn't it? It's I don't have the time to practice so much, but certain tracks do suit me better. So look out for me in your Monza, especially Monza, Silverstone, maybe Suzuka. I don't even think it's on the calendar, is it this season? Suzuka.
I don't think it is, I'm afraid, no.
Okay, so just 2 more poles this season then. That's all
So
you're
maybe not
getting.
quite the top 10 yet, but not far off at
No,
least.
yeah, we're
Um,
getting there.
and so, as you alluded to a little bit earlier on, there was your chance of a title back in season 29.
Yeah,
Um, so you're in the top five in the championship. Obviously, you'd had a very good season up until the and coming into the last week, where the top five, which was yourself, Theo, Dom, Chris, Magic Poop Cannon, and you were all separated by just 21 points.
crazy.
Going into the last week. Well, at the end, actually, you were all separated by 21 points in the final standings. Why do you think that season you weren't quite able to cross that line and take the title?
Well, if you take away all the incidents that I had with Theo, I would have been champion. the the last week, was it Saudi and Abu Dhabi from memory? It was definitely Abu Dhabi, but the other race I think was Saudi. It was a two DNFs, so I spent the whole season top three and ended up fifth overall. It's shocking, but yeah, the reason that never materialised is because there's this young boy, Theo Hickman, 13 years old at the time, an absolute magnet. Like, I've had rivalries in the past with many a driver, uh, but nothing like this guy, you know. And you get a lot of abuse for giving abuse to somebody so young, but Theo come in, he never earned the respect of anybody, and for some reason, well, not for some reason, but me and him were level on pace, so it was always me and him that would meet each other on track. So our fallout was the biggest of all. Um, and had he given the respect a little bit more, I would have given the respect as well. You know, it's a two-way street, isn't it? And there would have been less crashes. There would have been better entertainment, better racing for the viewers who watch TGP. But yeah, if we must have hit each other in double figures that season,
And why
definitely.
do you
My
think the two of you
Go on.
did end up having so many collisions?
Lack of respect. Absolutely. He come in. He was fast driver from the start. You got to credit him. He's a very good driver. Okay, but he's very. I'm sorry to all the Max Verstappen fans, but the way he come in did it was very Verstappen in his first title season. If that makes sense to you, as in
Yeah.
just expectant and believes he is the better driver, which fair enough if he is. But he didn't demand the respect of other drivers. He didn't participate in the group chats. He would just shove you off the road, really. And that didn't go down well with me. I'm a very respectful racer, um, and I didn't get that from him. So I started giving a bit back when he gave a bit to me, and then sure enough, it lasted all season long. It was hell of a spectacle. It was a really good season. Trading race wins, trading pole positions. But like I said earlier, he is an absolute magnet that season, and I'm glad he's gone.
And do you feel that on your part you could have handled it better or differently? Do you sort of, when you think back to it, do you think that you could have done anything different to perhaps make the situation better, or do you feel that the way that he conducted himself in your eyes led to the situation it did?
Yeah, my actions warranted the type of racing we got. And of course, as soon as I stepped up to his level, he would step it up again. And the conclusion of that was, you may remember a famous tweet by me after the end of the Canada race, which I won and saw him in the wall on the final lap. He just didn't demand the respect. And the way that season panned out was always the way that season was going to pan out. I just didn't expect it to be me fighting for a title, you know. But I'm
And
not
and
mad that I lost that title.
and
Fair
do
play.
you think that
He went
it
on and won it.
was perhaps as it was your first sort of title charge, there was perhaps a bit of naivety on your side of how things would get?
Um, Good question. I think I was the more mature driver, believe it or not, after everything I've just said. I perhaps maybe relied on maturity and experience of the league to get me through, and it would have done had there been no crashes. It absolutely would have done, because if you look at all of that season, if you take away my crashes with Theo, I had 0 incidents.
Hmm.
So he was the reason I didn't win it. But fair play to him, he did go on and get the job done in the end.
And do you think that he was, with the pace that he had, at least taking away perhaps his um, driving style and approach to some races, do you think he was the deserving champion that season? Because it was a very close finish in the end, obviously, between the
0 points,
five.
wasn't it?
And yes, it was
Yeah.
done on countback, of course. So, it was a very exciting night for the series, that last night. But do you think that he deserved the title with the pace that he had?
Purely on pace, yeah, absolutely. But the guy, if he had a bad qualifying, he couldn't get through the field. But so pace, yes. Driving style, no.
And so, obviously, it's not just been TGP that you have been competing and racing in, as you mentioned, with the other leagues as well. Your first sort of foray away, I guess, so to speak, came with the creation of ILR, of course, and you hosted one of the tiers there. How did you how did you sort of come across or come about starting up the league that you did?
It all comes back to that original, well, that not that original, that return to league racing. So in 2016, Jack Gooden won the championship. My teammate actually won the championship in
The
TGP2,
Jack Squared.
the Jack Squared. Yeah, and he, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he wasn't happy with the way TGP was run so much. Okay, and he always thought he could do a better job and do it on a bigger scale. And credit to him, he did. Maybe not necessarily a better job, depending on who you speak to, but that man ran, what was it, 14, 15 tiers on a Thursday and a Saturday evening with the help of one other guy. And all I did was ran one of the tiers, so I took that off of him. But between
Mm.
the two of them, they did everything by themselves, and absolutely crazy how they did it. So that came about because he thought he could do better, um, and he built it up on PlayStation, went to Xbox, went to PC, and he did a very good job.
And explain for those who don't know a little bit about know very much about it, how the sort of tiers work. So obviously managing, 14, 15 tiers, as you said there, with full grids, how is it that they sort of fed into each other? Did they feed into each other, or was it sort of each one
Yeah,
was equally as competitive, or?
it, each season you'd have your standard promotion relegation sort of system, providing the driver suited that, much like TGP does. Um, you had that at its absolute height. You had 8 PlayStation tiers. I think it was 3 on PC and 3 on Xbox. What's that add up to? 8 had 6, 14. So yeah, that's where we are. Xbox, I think, eventually got given to somebody else to run, and it fell apart very quickly. PC, I don't know a lot about, but as for PlayStation, at its peak, they were full grids every week. So what's that? 20 drivers times by 8. I'm no good at maths. 160, something like that. You'd have 160 drivers every week, and at the end of the season, obviously, whoever was deemed quick enough would go up, the slow ones would come down, and then it would work. But of course, ILR's problem is that one, it grew too big too quick, and it wasn't it wasn't very personal. Let's say it was very much a driver would join the league, and that would be it. There would be very little like personal. I don't know how to say it.
Well, sort of, there'd be less
Yeah,
of an intimate feel, I guess. You
yeah,
were
it
just
was
you were just a number effectively.
it was just a PlayStation. It was just an F1 league, just a very
Okay.
big F1 league. It was on the verge of your PSGLs. Like it was the level down from that, so still big scale. And yeah, you could say just a number, near enough.
And obviously ILR did come to an end, and not long after that was your turn of creating something from afresh yourself with the creation of Jacko Car. How
Hmm.
was it that that ended up coming about, and do you feel like that your time looking after the tiers that you did in ILR set you up well for the creation of Jacko Car?
To answer that last bit first, many years ago, Dom asked me to run TGP2 for a season, and I said no. I had no interest in doing it. Obviously, politely, I don't want to do
Yes.
it, but I was nowhere near ready. I must have been maybe early 20s. No, not even early 20s. Late teens, let's go with. I can't quite remember.
Hmm.
But the final season of ILR, so I ran at the time what was ILR 8, which was the bottom tier, but I had good connections with ILR 7, 6, and 5 because that was the slower end of ILR.
Hmm.
And just for a bit of fun, I'm a NASCAR fan. I like the NASCAR style of racing. I like the NASCAR point system that they have. I thought, excuse me, I thought running alongside of the main Formula One point system, which ILR used, why don't I, just for a bit of fun, on my own account, what was ILR Jacko at the time, um, just have like a NASCAR style regular season, then a playoff system, and I swear down, it was just a bit of fun. But that final season, season 6 of ILR, started in the maybe late July, August of F1 2019.
Hmm.
So we're in 2019. And then in September, I get a message from Mr. Gooding saying that he's thinking, he's not 100%, but he's thinking that this could be the last season of ILR. And of course, ILR seasons were 18, 19, 20 races long.
Hmm.
So we were way off. So what my thought is what can I do with this fun sort of side venture I've got going on? Can I make that something as an interim? So like a one-off season in the event that Jack doesn't want to continue with ILR. So I set it all up. I built up a very small team at the time. So Khalifa, Bazza, Owen Wyatt, and Mr. John. That was the 5 of us.
Yeah.
And I said, right, ILR might not be continuing beyond February of 2020. There's this, Jack might want a break because, it was throwing his mental health everywhere. He was getting a new job. He was moving house, all of that. Um, so we got this league ready. And as a placeholder, I said, for now, until we think of a name, we'll call it Jacko Car.
Hmm.
So I remember ILR finished in the February. I'd managed to secure a load of drivers from ILR 5, 6, 7, and 8. I think I got about maybe 30, 32, 33 drivers come across with me.
Hmm.
And I said, it's a temporary league, it's a bit of fun. And by the time the new game comes out, you're all going to be racing on or in the 7th season of ILR. Jack never come back. We had a successful first season. A few rules need to be tweaked here and there, but we learnt a lot. And then, you know, at the end of the season, I was asking Jack, "Are you coming back? Are you not coming back?" And I wouldn't get much response from him, so I
Hmm.
proceeded to start organising season 2, and same again, season 3, season 4, season 5, season 6, and now we're in season 7. So now it's very much the home of esports on Thursday nights, and I don't think ILR is coming back. Not 7 seasons in, but that's how it come about, and it runs conveniently. It's named after me. We never did find a better name. Conveniently, it fits in around TGP, so I can still race on a Wednesday, and occasionally one hub as well on a Friday. So our lower tier, the Kia series, is on a Tuesday, and then our Thursday is the Cup Series where all the big boys are.
Well, it's certainly it's had some really good success, hasn't it, over the years, which is in the seasons you've done it, which is great. For those listening who don't perhaps quite understand the NASCAR point system, playoff, etc., tell us a little bit about how that works and why it was that you were so fond of it to implement it in an F1 league.
First of all, the NASCAR games are absolutely useless for online. So I was like, if we want to do something with a NASCAR influence, we're going to have to do it on the F1 game.
Mhm.
And you had to work out a way to allow hard racing, but also keep in mind that these are F1 cars and they need the aero to keep them on the track, kind of thing. Because obviously NASCAR, they get banged about and broken up and they're still driving. You can't do that with no front wing on an F1 car. So we brought in the simulation damage, basically simulation everything.
Right.
And the Kia series is a little bit different because it's a shorter calendar, but the Cup series, in regards to the point system, there's 10 races of regular season point scoring, of which the top 10, so that could be either on points or anybody who's got a race win, would then advance to the playoffs. And the playoffs knock out two drivers from the top 10 each two races. So
Okay.
the postseason is like 6 races and then a championship 5.
Mm.
So you start with 10, then you knock out, go down to 8, go down to 6, and then you're left with 4 playoff drivers who make the championship 5. And you're probably wondering, where does the fifth guy come from? So the 10 drivers who don't make the playoffs then enter into just a straight up battle, a very short season, if you will. 6 races. The leading driver in points after 6 races technically finishes 11th, but they get like a wild card entry to a championship 5.
Okay.
So that makes up your 5. And you're probably thinking, well, sure, the guy, if they finished 11th overall in the season, they're not going to be very competitive. But we've had 2, what we call chase champions. So you've got the playoffs and the chase. We've
Yeah.
had 2 chase champions across the 2 tiers already. So the guy that's 11th, they are competitive. They're always competitive. Um, so yeah, and that's the long and short of it. It's a very difficult system to get your head around because there's playoff points, there's restart procedures, safety cars, mandatory pit stops. You can't pit after a safety car, all that kind of stuff, which we won't go into. You ain't got long enough. But
No.
that's the short of it.
No. Well, obviously it's clearly been very successful, and people are enjoying it, and have enjoyed taking part in it. I mean, you're still enjoying running it, I'm guessing, and you still think it's got legs to go on a bit longer?
I can't stop it because everyone still enjoys it. When the popularity dies down, I might consider it. But I think what's different about it, and this isn't hating on any other league, is it is unique. There is nothing else like it.
Hmm.
You've got your standard F1 leagues, and you've got your F1 leagues that might try something with a different point system, like the Joe Sayer point system we have in TGP. Um, but if you have a run of form, say you have 3 or 4 good races in Jakarta, it's absolutely meaningless
Hmm.
because you can't. It's not one of those where if you score the most points in the season, doesn't necessarily mean you're a champion. You've got to make it to that championship 5 first, and then get the luck, be good, all of that on the night. And I think it's the jeopardy and the unknown that attracts people. We're still a solid 2 tiers strong. I wouldn't want to introduce a 3rd tier, but I think it's so niche. That's the word. Its unique nature keeps the community in, and
And
that's why it's still going strong now. 7th
and
season.
and obviously it's mainly been on F1 games so far that Jack has run. You had a brief dalliance with um, Dirt Rally.
Yeah.
Do you see Jacko Car remaining solely on Formula One games, or do you see there being a change in the future? Obviously, you mentioned NASCAR games, so if that game gets better, could you see Jacko Car being a proper NASCAR league at some point, or?
I don't think so because the what you got to think about is even though everyone's here for the NASCAR points on the F1 game, it is primarily Formula One fans. So the market, they're all going to buy the F1 game, but what have I got? 36-ish drivers, something like that. I
Right.
couldn't get 36 people to buy the NASCAR game,
Hmm.
whereas I can. I don't even need to. They just buy the new F1 game every year anyway. So, but we have, you say we ventured into other series of motorsport, obviously Dirt Rally. We've done IndyCar, we've done NASCAR on the NASCAR game, but a much smaller bunch of us. We did F2, and I swear we did something else as well, but I can't think of it. So if NASCAR can make a competent game, then we'll do another NASCAR series, but separate to the main Jacko car, if you will.
And obviously back to your career in TGP. As we mentioned there, obviously you did obviously Jacko Card Dirt, but you did take part very briefly in TGP Dirt as well. What was it that you sort of enjoyed about that game and the way that run?
Well, I wasn't very good at it. I know
Well,
that.
you and me alike.
Yeah, but it's just rallying, isn't it? To pull it off, to get it right. When you get it right, it's such a good feeling. And I grew up with motorsport, so going from Formula One in TGP to having to being able to do rallying competitively, it was just a bit of fun. So, and the Jacko Kart rally took a lot of inspiration from TGP. I won't say I stole the idea, that's not me, but a lot of inspiration was from TGP.
And obviously, as well within TGP, you did take part in the TGP World Cup that we took
Oh, I
that
did,
took place
yeah.
last year. You had a fantastic 6-1 win over Kieran. Um, a 5-3 loss against CJH, and then a tense 3-3 draw with Matt, which secured you qualification from the group.
What
How
a
was
game
it?
that was.
Did you enjoy sort of doing something that wasn't motorsport related in a league? Was that something that you enjoyed doing?
I did actually. I'd always been intrigued by the TGP FIFAs. I'd never been a part of one until that one last year, and I was like, oh, I'll just be happy to, score a couple of goals, and before I know it, a win, loss, and then this final group game. I'm like, oh, I could go through it, and that 3-3 was one of the best games ever. Um, and then of course, like in real life football, you start to believe, don't you? It's like, oh, I
It
can
lures
get
you
out of
in.
them. Yeah, I can get out of this. I can be in the semi-finals before I know it. And it wasn't to be. I can't remember the score. I've obviously forgotten about it. But yeah, that
Quarterfinals, you
is
lost
that.
2-1 to eventual winner Sean.
Yes, that's a game that now you've reminded me. That's a game I could have won, but I didn't. So it is what it is.
And would you take part in other FIFA leagues in the future? Do you think?
Definitely, that was a lot of fun because it's competitive FIFA. A lot of people I know, even like the F1 fans, they're all into their ultimate teams and stuff. I'm not interested in that, but that's all quite competitive. Whereas I'm a career mode man on FIFA. I've never done anything competitive on FIFA, so it was good to mix it up.
And obviously, you mentioned about the fact that a few of your chaps in Jakukara like their football, etc. Obviously, TGP Series has a pro clubs. Could we see a Jacko Car pro clubs anytime soon?
Probably not. My philosophy on that is, or my stance, if you will, on that is much the same as Jack Gooding in ILR. He wanted to keep it strictly motorsport, and he did that. And I'm very much of the same opinion. It's just more to run, or it's finding someone who wants to run it. So for something non-motorsport related, it's easier for me to just, you know, wait for the invite from TGP and go and play with them. It hasn't happened yet, but You never know.
Still time. You might
Still
have a
time.
chance to put your boots on still. Well, Jacko, it's been very lovely having a chat with you. We're going to end the podcast as we usually do with our quick fire questions. So first things first, of course. Favorite track to race on any game?
You said quick, didn't you?
I did say quick. This isn't.
Silverstone.
Least favorite track to race on any game?
This is not quick. Australia, because it's awful now. Albert Park, that is. Yeah.
Albert Park, yeah. Who is your favourite driver to race against that you've raced against in the past?
Over the whole 11 years?
Well, anybody, yeah, that you've raced against in the 11 years of TGP.
I've had some cracking battles, but pace-wise, who I've always been with, Mr. John, easy.
And you've always enjoyed racing with him?
And it's the opposite end of the spectrum compared to Theo Hickman.
Well, I'm pretty sure I know what your next answer is going to be, but your least favourite person to race against?
Well, Theo Hickman. But I had a lot of fun that season.
And finally, Jacko, obviously we talked a little bit about your want for keeping things simple in Jacko Car, but in TGP Series, is there a game that you wish that TGP would do a league in? That's a game that might exist at the moment, or might not exist.
If NASCAR can make a competent game again, then TGP to run a league on NASCAR so that I don't have to go through the effort doing it myself. That's your answer.
That's good stuff. Well, Jacko, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for finally joining us on the podcast. It's better late than never,
good.
I would say. And it's been lovely chatting to you about your time in TGP Series, and obviously with the creation of leagues like ILR and Jacko Car. And we're going to be seeing you obviously racing very soon, as you said, in your ongoing bid to break into the top 10 of TGP2 pole sitters. That's obviously still very much ongoing, season underway at the moment. What are your thoughts and chances on the season looking ahead?
Well, if you look at the first week, what we've just done, Australia, what I've just mentioned, absolutely awful. It could be a setup fault, but I don't like the track. Looking at those two races, not very good. But obviously, me and Dan, teammates at Mercedes, went and put it on pole and second in the race, and then we fell away. Dan seems to be the stronger driver out of the two of us, but hopefully, once the good tracks come along, I can start to help him out. As for expectations, that grid of drivers, I should really be looking at top 5. But I don't think I'm championship material this season.
Well, Jacko, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us, as I said, and we'll look forward to seeing you on track again very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
So there we have it. An interesting chat there with Jacko. I have to say, it was particularly interesting to hear about his time in TGP Series, and most notably, the battle that he had with Theo Hickman across his time in the series. It's interesting to see quite how that rivalry developed, and quite how intense it got, as for a lot of people on the outside, they couldn't really understand quite why it was happening. Nonetheless, it was interesting to hear about that, and his time in running Jacko Car as well. Next week, we're having a chat with our very own zoologist, as Alex Coates joins me in the podcast, and we have a chat with him about his time in the series. Thank you.